Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. In the last video, we discussed about the historical basis of the psychologist. Now let's move on to the schools of psychology. So, Wilhelm Wundt focused on understanding the structures of the mind, and he used methods like introspection, asking people to describe their thoughts and feelings to gather data. Wundt's student Edward Titchener took these ideas and developed the first school of psychology called structuralism. Structuralists believed that the best way to understand the mind was to break it down into the basic elements like sensation, images, feeling, just like the chemist breaks down substances. So let's talk about the introspection, which is the main technique of the structuralism. Wundt's introspection was not a casual affair but a highly practiced form of self-examination. He trained psychology students to make observations that were biased by personal interpretations or previous experiences, and used their results to develop a theory of conscious thoughts. Highly trained assistants would be given a stimulus such as striking metronome and would reflect on the experience. They would report what the stimulus made them think and feel. The same stimulus, physical surroundings and instructions were given to each person. Wundt's method of introspection did not remain a fundamental tool of psychological experimentation past the early 1920s. His greatest contribution was to show that psychology could be a valid experimental science. Titchener trained his students to become skilled at trained introspection and to report only the sensations as they were experienced without reliance on meaning or words, which he called a stimulus error. Using this approach, Titchener students reported various visual and auditory tactile experiences. Titchener concluded that there are three kinds of mental components that could be considered to constitute conscious experience, that are sensations, images, and affections. He suggested these components could be dissected into their unique properties, which he identified as quality, intensity, duration, and clearness. Quality is basically cold or red, distinguishes each element from the other. Then intensity, how strong, loud, or bright, that is the sensation is. Then there is duration, course of sensation over the time, that is how long it lasts. And then there is clearness, role of attention in consciousness, clearer if attention is directed towards it. Next we have functionalism, a response to structuralism developed by William James, often called as the father of American psychology. Functionalists were more interested in understanding in the function of mind, how mental processes help people adapt to their new environment. Instead of focusing on the individual parts, functionalism looked at the bigger picture. How does the mind work in real life situations? Functionalism stems directly from Darwin's school of thought, emerging in the 19th century as a counter to prevailing theory of structuralism. Unlike structuralism, which tries to simply understand our subjective experience of consciousness, functionalism aims to find meaning and purpose in what we experience. Functionalists sought to explain mental processes in a more systematic and accurate manner. Functionalism was an important influence on psychology. It influenced the development of behaviorism and applied psychology. Functionalism also influenced the educational system, especially with regards to the beliefs that children should learn at the level for which they are developmentally prepared. In the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud shook the world with his theory of psychoanalysis. Freud believed that much of what drives human behavior lies hidden in the unconscious mind, including desire, fears, and unresolved conflict from the childhood. Freud introduced concepts like id, ego, and superego, which described how different parts of our psyche interact. His ideas were controversial, but they had a huge impact on both psychology and popular culture. So Freud was a Jew, so he attended medical school, as medicine and law were the only available options for a Jewish man at that time. Though Freud wished to pursue neuropsychological research positions were extremely hard to come by. As a result, Freud moved into the private practice with a focus in neurology. While training, Freud befriended with the physician and psychologist Joseph Breuer. Once Breuer began treating hysteria patients by using hypnosis and encouraging them to talk about their past. This process hypnosis, which Breuer's patients Anna O refer to as the talking cure, allowed patients to discuss memories that they could not recall during a conscious state, and as a result, the symptoms of their hysteria would be relieved. Freud co-authored studies in hysteria with Breuer and then traveled to learn more about hypnosis under the renowned French neurologist. Then Freud returned to his hometown and began a private practice. Originally, Freud used hypnosis on his neurosis and hysteria patients, but he soon realized that he could get more out of patients by having them sit in a relaxed position like on a couch and by encouraging them to say whatever was on their mind, known as free association. By doing so, Freud believed he would be able to analyze what was said and determine what traumatic event in the past was responsible for the patient's current sufferings. Freud's theory of psychosexual development is one of the most well-known and controversial theories in the psychology. Freud believed that personality was for the most part established by the time a person was 6 years old, and that when a predetermined sequence of stages was successfully completed, it would result in a healthy personality, while failure to do so would lead to an unhealthy personality. Freud believed that the stages in the sequence were based on erogenous zones, that is, the sensitive parts of the body that arouse sexual pleasure, desire, and stimulation, and that failure to complete a stage would make a child fixated on that erogenous zone. This would lead to the person to over or underindulge once he or she was an adult. For example, the oral stage, which is from the child's birth to 18 months. In this stage, the child focuses on oral pleasures like sucking because they create a sense of comfort and trust. If there is too little or too much gratification in this stage, the child will develop an oral personality or oral fixation and become preoccupied with oral behavior. Like Freud, people with this type of personality are more likely to bite their nails, smoke, drink, or overeat, and will be gullible, depend on other people, and will always be followers. The next stage is anal stage, which is 18 months to 3 years. During this stage, a child's main focus turns towards the bladder and bowel control, and a child gains pleasure from controlling these activities. Freud believed that success was achieved in this stage as a result of parents using praise and reward by toilet training, leaving their child feeling capable and productive. Such behavior would lead to the child having a competent, creative personality later in the life. If parents were too lenient to their child during the training, he believed it could lead to an anal expulsive personality and the child would be destructive, messy, and wasteful. If the parents took an approach that was too strict or forced toilet training too soon, this could lead to an anal retentive personality that the child developed an obsession with perfection, cleanliness, and control. Then there is phallic stage, which is from 3 to 6 years. At this stage, Freud believed that the pleasure zones turn towards the genitals, giving rise to one of the most famous ideas, that is the Oedipus complex. Freud believed that at this stage, a boy unconsciously develops a sexual desire for his mother, sees his father as a competition for her affection, and wishes to replace his father. Additionally, the boy will develop castration anxiety as he begins to view his father as someone who is trying to punish him for his Oedipal feelings. Rather than fight with the father, however, the boy will identify with him, and in an effort to vicariously possess the mother, he will become like him. Fixation at this stage, Freud believed, could lead to sexual deviance and being confused about or having a weak sexual identity. In 1913, Carl Jung coined the term the electrocomplex, which describes a similar relationship that young girls experience with their fathers. Freud disagreed with this concept, however, believing that girls were actually experiencing penis in a way where resentment and discontent exist because the girl wished they had penis themselves. Then there is latency stage, which is 6 years till puberty. At this stage, sexual urges are suppressed and the sexual energy of the child is directed toward other exchanges like social interaction and intellectual activities. It is during this stage that children play, mostly with children of the same sex, and there is no psychosexual development or fixation that occurs. Then there is genital stage, which is puberty till adulthood. The last stage in Freud's model involved the reawakening of sexual urges and a sexual interest in the opposite sex. If all of the previous stages were completed successfully, the person will be caring and well balanced, and player will be focused on the genitals. If there is a fixation at this stage, the individual may have sexual perversions. Of course, the Freud theories have its critics. Freud focused almost exclusively on the development of the male. His research was not based on the behavior of children, but rather on what he was told by his adult patients. Because of the long delay between the hypothetical childhood cause and the eventual adulthood effect in his theories, it is incredibly difficult to measure or test whether Freud's ideal of psychosexual development are accurate. Next, there are the structural models of personality. In addition to his concepts of psychosexual development, Freud believed that there was numerous other driving forces at play that were important to understand. Freud believed that there were numerous other driving forces at play that were important to understanding the development of a person's personality. His structural model of personality attempts to describe how the mind works by making distinction between three parts of the personality and the human mind, that is, as discussed before, the id, ego and superego. So it is basically what every person is born with. The id is responsible for getting the newborn child's basic needs met. Freud claimed that the id is based on something known as the player principle, which essentially means that it wants whatever feels good at that precise moment and disregard any other options. There is no consideration for how the rest of the situation might play out or for any other people involved. For example, when a baby is hurt, wanted something to eat, need to be changed, or simply want the attention of others, it drives the baby to cry until its needs are met. Next, there is ego. Ego is the aspect of the personality that begins developing naturally over the first 3 years as a result of the child interacting with the world around him. Because of this, Freud claimed that ego is based on something he referred to as the reality principle. The ego comes to realize that there are other people around that also have desires and needs, and that impulsive, selfish behavior can actually lead to harm. The ego has to consider the reality of any particular circumstances while also meeting the needs of the id. For example, when a child thinks twice about doing something inappropriate because he understands the negative outcome that will occur, this is the ego asserting itself. Next, there is superego. The superego develops when a child is 5 years old and is nearing the end of the phallic stage. This is the part of our personality that is made up of morals and ideas that have been acquired and placed on us by society and our parents. Many people also find the superego to be equivalent to the conscience, since both terms have come to refer to the part of our personality that judges what is right from what is wrong. Freud believed that in a truly healthy person, the ego would be stronger than the id and superego, so that it could consider the reality of the situation while both meeting the needs of the id and making sure the superego was not disturbed. In the case of the superego being strongest, a person will be guided by very strict moral, and if id is the strongest, a person will seek pleasure over morality and could end up causing great harm. Rape, for example, is when one chooses pleasure seeking over morality and is a sign of strong id. Then Freud believed that our feelings, beliefs, impulsive and underlying emotions were buried in our unconscious and therefore not available to the waking mind. However, Freud also believed that there were levels of consciousness beyond just conscious and unconscious. To better understand the Freud's theory, imagine an iceberg. The water surrounds the iceberg is known as the non-conscious. This is everything that has not become part of our conscious. These are things we have not experienced and are not aware of, and therefore did not become part of or shape our personality in any way. The tip of the iceberg is our conscious and is only a very small portion of our personality. And since it's the only part of ourselves that we are familiar with, we actually know very little of what making up our personality. The conscious contain thoughts, perception, and everyday cognition. Directly below the conscious at the base of the iceberg is the preconscious or subconscious. If prompted, the preconscious mind can be assessed, but it is not actively part of our conscious and requires a little digging. Things such as childhood memory, our old telephone number, the name of a friend we had when we were younger, and any other deeply stored memories are found in this area. It is in the preconscious mind that the superego can be found. Since we are only aware of the tip of the iceberg at any given time, the unconscious is incredibly large and consists of those buried inaccessible layers of our personality. It is here that we find things like fear, immoral urges, shameful experiences, selfish needs, irrational wishes, and unacceptable sexual desires. This is also where the it can be found. The ego is not fixed to one particular part of the iceberg and can be found in the conscious, preconscious, or unconscious. There is no denying just how influential Sigmund Freud was to the field of psychology and psychiatry. His ideas completely changed the way people viewed our personality, sexuality, memory, and therapy. And he is perhaps the most well-known psychologist in the popular century after he first arrived as a notable scholar of mind. Alright, so that is all for this video. In the next videos, we will explore the other schools of the psychology and the pioneers that lead to the development of those thoughts and schools. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this.